Hello, everybody. Welcome to our World Today, the Union's Perspective live discussion where we talk about all the things that happened this week in the news. And today we are talking about Joe Biden stepping down and Kamala Harris being his representative and new candidate to the presidential election in November. And we're talking about all of the things that will be pertaining to that. Then we will be going to the Microsoft bug that affected the entire world this past week. And if we have time, we're going to talk about how prices are going up for locals in Spain because of tourism and the studies that we have on that. So let's start. So Joe Biden has stepped down. I think right after the debate, there was kind of a council with Obama and his secretaries, and people thought that he would be speculating. They were speculating that he would be stepping down because of that, and he did, which means that his vice president, obviously, naturally, is going to be the new candidate. And there is a lot to say about that because, first of all, I think a lot of people in the US were kind of thinking that he was unfit to run anyway, but also maybe he's like Harris, his Kamala Harris ready. How do we feel about it? Like, was she the natural candidate or does it feel like a replacement? And so obviously I want to turn to you, my US friends, so that you can kind of share what you feel about this because I think as non-US citizens we didn't have the complete image of how bad it was up until very recently, obviously this week. So, does somebody want to talk about it right now? Do you have any feelings and things that you would like to explain right now to our audience? Nadia, Isaiah, Sage. Nadia is reaching out.
I will speak to the spiritual sense of it, of how I feel about what's going on.
Sure.
I feel that there has been a lot of uprooting that's been happening since Trump era. And this uprooting has not been cleared. In fact, we've been seeing that this is going even deeper, and there's a lot more that needs to be healed, which is why we're at this place where Biden is bowed out and Kamala Harris is here. And we see that Kamala Harris has not been the most active representative of our country. And now we have two opponents, two candidates that don't have the best interest in America. And so I feel there's much to heal and there's much awareness that is coming out of what to heal. And I have a question for Sage on what if she did any research on Biden and Obama discussing the his dropout, and if she knows any news about that, and if we could investigate deeper into this.
Okay, so Sage, you're the one that shared the article first. Is that it?
Yeah, no, I didn't.
Oh
No,
no,
I haven't
that's
read
PC.
anything specifically about that or like about how the Biden dropping out of the race, like how exactly that happened. But yeah, but definitely, I mean, we know that like more and more people were like telling him or asking him to step down and stuff like that. But I don't know. I know in our previous discussion, we were talking about it and kind of debating like was he really, unfit for office and stuff like that. But it got more and more clear, I think,
I
as
don't
it
think I
went
wanted to
by.
admit it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
Yeah.
want to see it.
well,
Maybe a lot of America felt that way
yeah,
because I just felt like he would be the best candidate to beat Trump.
yeah,
But if he's unfit, of
Mhm.
course, he shouldn't run.
yeah.
Um,
And
Yeah, that's funny because right after the debate, you guys said like, hey, like people said that he did things that were kind of weird. I think there was one to die, but I didn't think it was that much. And I mean that's okay. Like I feel like maybe in the past month we've been uncovering more and more what it actually takes to run for a campaign in 2024. So do you agree with that or not? Because like a lot changed in like a month, I think.
um, I feel like I don't know. I feel like it was like could be just either denial or I was like the way I saw it, like he has a good he uh Biden had like behind him like Kamala Harris, and then like there's a
he
whole
has a
other
good team.
yeah, he has a good team. Like there's a whole other line of successors. So if he were to be elected, but he were like, actually, I can't do this, there's like a whole team of people starting with Kamala Harris who would be lined up to replace him.
Mhm.
And I was thinking of it more in terms of like, there's a whole, yeah, like you're voting for a whole team here. And also in our country, it's a binary choice between like uh, it was a binary choice between like him and his team or Donald Trump, who has ambitions to like become a dictator and a tyrant, right? And so that's not a difficult choice at all. So that's what I was feeling. But in terms of like for the American people to like have confidence in their leader, because they do want that like confidence in like the president. And then also in order to have like energized people who are like enthusiastic about what the candidate actually offers. Um, it seems to be that Kamala Harris is offering that to people more.
Mm-hmm.
But like you guys were saying, what she's done in her office as vice president and in her whole life in the past has been either it's like one of two things. Like if you're viewing it without knowing anything about her, it's one of two things. Either she hasn't had a whole lot of huge victories, which I think is probably think probably the other thing is there hasn't really been very much like promotion of her, or she hasn't been promoting
Mhm.
herself or very much of that at all. So, you know, that's kind of one of those things where it's like we were talking in amongst ourselves and with Chrissy as well, and she was saying how this whole situation of being like, oh my gosh, we have an unfit candidate could have been avoided with more transparency and honesty in the past, and also yeah, just more of a willingness to like take action and confront the issue in the past, because now they have a big mess and like who knows, you know, who Kamala Harris is or like what her like what she brings to the table. We don't know because no effort has been put into that. So yeah, it's kind of it's like the spiritual lesson of like not taking action is taking action, and not making a choice is making a choice. So yeah,
Mhm. That's interesting. So is that what you were saying, Nadia, about like uprooting people? Because uprooting people, uprooting like patterns and healing things, because it feels like Joe Biden, when he was VP of Obama, he had a lot done on his image. And the more we talk, the more it feels like Kamala Harris is more of a bureaucrat than a communicator. Or she was only presented for her bureaucracy because Baby Biden thought that he was fit to do a second mandate here. And so basically, we don't know a whole lot. Like, the only thing that I know about her is that she managed everything pertaining to NASA. And I know, I must think that she's doing a lot. Like, she addressed, I think, the House of Representatives and Senate a few times, but I think in terms of communication, and that pertains to a lot of what the Democrats are healing, we don't have, or yeah, they don't have a whole lot of good communication, I would say.
Yeah, you're spot on about that. Like, even not being in America and being in France, you can tell that her communication style has not been as assertive. But also to the fact that with Biden not being in the image, Biden has gotten this far because he developed that trust with the community and the collective in the US, whereas Kamala Harris has not built that trust. So if she has a strong team, her direction and her voice and her representation, her presence isn't as trustworthy as Biden would have been, even with his deteriorating health. So
Mhm.
now she's at a point where she has to prove herself. And something that Shaleia had brought up about Hillary Clinton that got me thinking, and I wanted to bring that up with you guys, is when Clinton was a candidate, I felt that there was some dissonance with her being a white feminine and bringing more separation with Black and brown feminists compared to white feminists. And now I feel that with Kamala Harris being a representative of biracial, she has even less activism than Hillary. And now I like kind of see clearly that Hillary was doing the best that she could do. And she was actually so active in equality, whereas Kamala Harris has not been of that representation.
It feels like the contrast may be an eye opener there, but I'm eager to hear what Granville has to say about all of that.
So I feel like you guys have raised quite a few valid points from the perspective of her visibility and potentially because of not being as visible, there's a perception of a lack of ability. But I also, something that just kind of comes back into my mind was where we had the conversation around the black female trope. So the more the black female stands up, the more she's seen to be militant and difficult. And so Kamala Harris is in that unfortunate space of how far do you push the envelope before you lose people because they assume your behavior to be extreme because of past pain versus your capability. So there's that underlying current where you kind of have to go, what interest was being served? And if Joe Biden's health hadn't become much more visible as something that's not so great, wouldn't his second term have been the perfect first term for her to step more into the limelight to assume that role? So you kind of, it's almost that situation of, did we put all our eggs in one basket, or is this the prime opportunity for Trump's campaign rhetoric to completely have been swung back around on him because his campaign was based on Joe Biden's inability as an old white man, and now he becomes the old white man in that scenario because you highlighted this, so let's see how you deal with your karma under these
Yeah.
circumstances.
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of everything here. Because there's something about, on TikTok, bear with me here. The whole communication of Kamala Harris HQ is about Brat Summer. Brat is the album of Charlie XCX. And so basically it's calling to the young people, and she's represented. It was very like she looks very non-committal to most like US citizens, but like on social media, everyone is doing their most on the Democrat side so that she can be seen as the representative of the young electorate. And it's funny because like it's kind of cool to see like mainstream media talking about Charlie XCX and Bratz in the same sentence as like Harris in US presidential election. However, there was something very, very healing about Barack Obama that I think like we don't acknowledge enough is that through his mandates as senator and president, the only time where he was seen as aggressive was when he was doing his campaign to ensure that Osama bin Laden was neutralized, and that's the only thing that he was seen as aggressive about. And he talked about many things. It was activist of many, many things. However, like the communication was like basically a message of hope and family and unity and harmony, whether he followed through or not, like he was consistent. And I don't think he could ever slack off about that because people were just watching him at all times as a Black president. So for like 8 to 12 years, he was just like very, very consistent, even in his campaigns, on making sure that he was not seen as aggressive. So I think no matter what we think about him, he demonstrated a way to assert herself as really powerful without being aggressive. And of course, like the detractors are always going to make you feel like you're aggressive or like you have like Kenyan origins or Jamaican origins or you're a heathen Muslim or something like that. And that's a danger for the US democracy. But if your communication and power is so strong and so rooted in a message of peace, like basically they're just going to look like jerks, really, and you're going to win, and that's how you won. And I think like we don't maybe like we didn't have like the mental space to kind of analyze that, because we went directly into Trump, and that was like extreme and kind of brutal. But that's actually what he did, and so there's a way. I just feel like there's a way. You know, everything that's coming up right now, it may seem chaotic for some, cool for some, it may seem like the end of the world for some. But we must remember that amidst like all catastrophic situation, there's still a way to present yourself as peaceful and win because you feel powerful because of your peace. And I hope that this is something that people can remember because right now it's just going like all over the place, you know? And maybe what we can do right now is in order to like kind of have a complete sense about this topic is talking about how people envision Trump since the assassination attempt, because it may feel that the debate completely eroded his image. It also eroded Biden's image, but the assassination attempt, he looks like, and we already talked about that, a martyr or a powerful man that can just withstand and manage like even the worst of situations. And like it basically provoked extreme emotions, and extreme emotions are needed to vote for someone who promotes fear. So I'm just wondering, like, if anybody has like any feelings or insights that they want to share about that. And yeah, but I think like most people like know what happened. Like basically Trump was shot and it missed his head, but it touched his ear, and he was at the hospital, and we talked a little bit about that last week in our discussion. So I think Sage maybe had some insights about that.
Oh, yeah, like I don't think the data was super clear about like what the effect was of the like um the assassination attempt and Trump surviving it. But I feel like there was some indication that yeah, he was seen as a martyr from that. And some people were impressed by like how he was dealing with it. So, but with Biden dropping out and then with Kamala Harris stepping up and a ton of people being really reinvigorated by that, I feel like my feeling was that it kind of sucks the oxygen away from that whole fire, and it kind of diverts all of the media attention to Kamala Harris and to the Democratic Party, because they did that, because they said we have a non-viable candidate. We literally have to pick someone different. It's unprecedented, in US history. So yeah, that kind of sucks all of the oxygen away from that. And so I feel like it kind of puts them almost at an even footing, although maybe not quite, because like you guys were saying, like Kamala Harris has a lot of work to do, and her whole side of the thing has a lot of like work to do. So I don't know. What do you guys?
Yeah, I feel maybe this can put them in an equal footing for some, and for others it can look like a sign of weakness on the parts of the Democrats. And just to give you a little bit of insight, here's what I found in terms of like what is occurring right now. So Bolsonaro, the Brazilian ex-president, led opinion presidential polls even before his stabbing, and it is likely he would have won the race even if the attack had not occurred. So basically, the Brazilian president, when he was running for a campaign, he was attacked as well, and many have compared the two events, especially because like Bolsonaro is very close to Trump in terms of politics. And people want to analyze that. So many Brazilians in 2018 were frustrated by years of scandal in the Workers' Party that included the impeachment of former President Dilma Rousseff and sits annulled conviction against former and current President da Silva. But the attack undoubtedly strengthened Bolsonaro's standing by diminishing the salience of his record for voters and the media, allowing his political movement to falsely lay claim to a moral high ground rather than substantively discussing issues, which means that his detractors were less vocal about what it didn't do, which we discussed last week, right? And more vocal about his assassination attempts, which can help, especially because Bolsonaro didn't participate in the last debate right before the vote. So something to just like know about that. But I think Nadia wanting to say something about like whether it felt like it strengthened the Democrats or it weakened their stance.
Yeah, I agree with Sage about the limelight has now gone to Kamala Harris. And a lot of people are even not even mentioning Trump getting shot. I mean, I feel like just the glaze on the ear in itself was not a big matter as him having like further damage as well. And I wanted to speak about something that Granville had mentioned about Kamala Harris's assertiveness. I feel that when she was chosen as VP, she kind of already drew that line on where she will take her candidacy or her vocal activism. And she continues to walk that line. I feel like she will follow in Biden's path on how he presents his issues. But of course, I refer to Sage on deeper research on Kamala Harris's political history, as well as Obama, Biden, and Kamala Harris's discussions and how they chose to lead it. But I think if she doesn't come out in her true authenticity, that is what is going to be representative on our collective and what we are ready for at the moment. And that's how I feel. I don't think that she will come out straight because it's too risky for her to be that assertive and come out with her personal opinions on what the political weather should be in our nation. I think it's too risky for her to even say her opinions. So we will see about that. But in terms of Trump being shot, I think it's old news by now. So that might be a good thing.
I don't know, I'm not sure, but Granville, do you have any sense of if like it's strengthening or weakening the Democrat Party right now?
So I honestly feel like it was probably quite a smart tactic. It might not have been the plan, but it was most certainly a very strategic response. And I agree with Sage that in order to deflect from the almost supposed martyrdom of the Trump incident, it is a smart move to shake the tree at this point so that people pay attention to something else. Unfortunately, it may backfire. But we also have to trust that people are smart enough to make healthy choices for themselves and their country. And I think it's what you spoke to a few weeks ago, Irene, around what is your love list for the government that you want, the country that you want, the life that you want to live. And I'm hoping that the American people are aware, much more aware right now under these circumstances, given all the elections that have happened in other countries and having seen those results swing in various ways. Because the challenge is, and as much as we would like to avoid the sense of it, if America sneezes, the global economy catches a cold.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for sure. Sage, I think you wanted to have the last few words on that.
Oh, yeah, like I was just saying, like, I think, like, briefly before we move on, I think we should mention a teeny bit of what we were talking about how, like, the Trump assassination attempt is still relevant in terms of, like, the director of the Secret Service testified, and she was giving, like, really vague answers. Like, she doesn't, nine days out from the shooting, like, she didn't, or she couldn't give a response as to how the assassin got a clear line of sight to Trump. So it shows, like, serious issues, because it's like, if in 9 days you can't get clear on that, that's kind of an issue, because there weren't a whole lot of stones to be turned over, you would think. So it's kind of weird. So I feel like that's an overall theme of this really recent history, is that Americans are finding these, like, cracks and holes and weird things in our like institutions, and we aren't trusting them as much, like the Supreme Court, both major parties, with Trump and Biden, it's brought a lot of mistrust, and then the Secret Service and everything like that. And it's kind of just like strange. And they've seemed to be very unwilling to admit what the mistake was, basically, and it's just like weird to everybody. But I think that happens, like that happened with the Vietnam War too, is that people used to trust government a lot more. And then with the Vietnam War, they're trying to make it seem like it was going well, but then it was revealed that it really wasn't, and that was a huge upset for America. And then there was Nixon with Watergate, spying on his opponent in the election. And so that happened, and I think it kind of like, there are these cycles where people start to realize that more and more, that like you can't, hopefully people start to realize this, that you can't expect your leaders to like, you have to hold your leaders accountable, and you always have power, and giving your power away to others doesn't result in good things. And I also think that that's what we saw with this, the Biden thing, and like them not, maybe even like trying to conceal how fit or unfit he really was, because of this fear, like this giving power to Trump, like being like, well, Biden's the only one who's ever beat him in an election, which there's not very much data to go off of. So that doesn't mean Biden's the only person who could beat him in an election. So, but they just spew these trite lines to try to like justify it, like he's the only one who's ever beaten Trump. And it's just like,
We're so
brilliant
traumatized.
insight. Yeah,
We're
I'm
so
sorry.
traumatized from Clinton losing.
Yes,
is what I feel.
exactly. But when you let that fear lead, you're just feeding the outcome you don't want, right? Because
Right.
this very well could have manifested, or could manifest as, well, like we lost trust with the people, right? And so we lose. But it could also manifest as like things got shaken up, and then now people are energized, which there's that feeling too. So that's all I wanted.
Right. And maybe like what people are realizing is that Clinton is maybe still fit to lead in some way, shape, or form. We don't know which one yet, but like it just feels, yeah. Thank you, Sage. That was very interesting and powerful. I'm grateful that you ended this on that. And we'll definitely be going deeper there, especially because like I think some deputy chief of the Secret Service was resigning because of all of this. But yeah, I feel like it's time to move on to a new topic, which is that nearly 8.5 million Windows devices across the globe are affected by the CrowdStrike outage. I almost want to say power outage, but it's kind of like it's just basically a bug. It's a really, really like insignificant defectuous line of code that's kind of impacted the whole world, including airports, which was kind of a little bit of a catastrophe for a lot of people. And I think we're realizing that it's not like super, super like deep. Like CrowdStrike is a good company, like once the line of code is completely corrected, which I think we're close to doing, like everything should be potentially like going very well, right? But I think most of people were really realizing, even more so when they had kind of like had a catastrophic apocalyptic mindset, that a lot of the things that we do in the world are very connected. in our tech especially, and everything could go down very easily with all of that. And I think people were kind of scared of that. I think it was like a new, for a lot, Y2K, like the passage from, I was little when that happened, so I don't have a lot of insight on that, but the passage from the 20th century to 2000s and being scared that basically the whole world would go down just because of a line of code. And yeah, I have a lot to say on this. I must say, like, I think there's a lot to say on this, but I want to hear you guys first. And Grenville seems to have some sort of insight that he wants to share with us, like, because your facial expression was just like giving, like,
That's so funny because I was listening to you and just imagining it, but it's not a significant, well, it's not my sense of a significant insight, but I think it's quite related to to the conversations we had a few weeks ago around the rising incidence of artificial intelligence and that kind of stuff. And for me, the concern is if one piece of code can have that type of global impact. And my sense of an over-reliance on Microsoft, we are kind of stuck in a precarious position because there is no real counter to Microsoft on that scale. It's just too ingrained in almost everything. And so, the feeling, what you were seeing on my face was, what the hell happens if the world does shut down kind of thing because of two bugs in a line of code? Because the fact is it sounds simple, but it's not as simple to kind of do root cause analyses and solve for everything. And I think that's what we were speaking to last week as well, with like the technology around the framework around managing spatial conflicts in space. There's a lot of things that we are exceptionally reliant on and have created significant dependencies for us as humanity. And on the backdrop of what type of fail safes do we have, I think that's more concerning to me, is like, what type of fail-safe do we have and how quickly do we recover under those circumstances? And it's something you spoke to earlier, is like, it feels like we're in an otherworldly timeline. And I laughed because I read a meme that said, we are living through somebody's history exam in 2060. The most difficult part of the history exam in 2060. And you kind of have to go, you may have just called it.
I know. It's I think we have called it. That is the worst thing. So first of all, let's go back a little bit. Let's rewind. How can I explain this? I feel like, yes, there's like maybe an absence of firewall between the computers that should be there, and that is not there at this time, and that is kind of a fault of the system. So even though it was a little line of code, and I know this can happen, like I think it can also be avoided, and I think it's relevant to like kind of illustrate like an upset that we have around the use of our tech. It's not the fault of Bill Gates per se for building an empire that kind of came into like a professional tech computer monopoly that also rules like our public transport and our airplanes and airports. That's not necessarily his fault. What I would say is that there are several signs that this could have been avoided, and it's not about Y2K or like the 2000s. It's about the little things where, for example, like this was an update of a software. And I think everyone here has had problems after updates of their phones, like general updates, and everything is going to shit. And I've had it in work, I've had it on my phone, I've had it, and it's just ugh, for everyone. Like nobody likes them. But they need to be used as well in order to keep up with the system, with this thought that everything must have an expiration date, and if you're not going to the latest version of iOS, your phone is just not going to work. And I think it's so upsetting for everybody. And I think what this is showing, and maybe we just need this type of contrast at this time for humanity to kind of understand, and that's too bad, but it's just like this update, it's like on every computer. So possibly like when everything goes to shit, nobody has any way of arranging it but the company that did the update. And when it's on like phones for like a few hours, that's fine. I think people were just a little bit arrogant to think that they could just game the system and it's not happening on a global scale at least once. And I think that's a lesson. And it's just too bad that we went to that to learn the lesson, that Microsoft or CrowdStrike had to go to that to learn the lesson. But I mean, like, it's definitely something where people have been irked by it for so many years, and nobody has done anything about it because it's my company, it's my tech, I want to make money, so shut up, you know? And now look at how it backfired. So, I mean, that's a lesson for me, you know? And I don't know if I have anything else to say on it at this time. I think CrowdStrike, like any individual person separated in their own compartment, like it was not like necessarily their fault. But in the globality of how we work, it definitely feels like there's something that shouldn't be there. Like there's something like this like primary in like the updates and wanting to gain technological and financial power by any means that shouldn't be there and shouldn't be affecting things that, you know, things like transport, public transport and airplanes. So that's my own thing about it, but I'm curious to know, like, do you guys feel anything about it? Like, I'm very passionate about this, and maybe not everyone is passionate about it, but I'm curious to know. Nadia seems to have some thoughts.
So can I just add one thought? And that is that the contrast surfaced by CrowdStrike may just have been their purpose in this space. So, the only way you see it is for the contrast to actually take place. And the only way for the contrast to take place is for somebody to actually be at the forefront of doing it. Because sometimes, it's that sense of something has to sometimes scream very loudly to get our attention. This was a loud scream and nobody could ignore it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
I actually feel like this was a very gracious mishap because it could have been a lot worse. I'm saying this because it is so true about our reliance on Microsoft that we have been so comfortable for all these years. We didn't even recognize the extent of our potential in technology. Instead, we've gotten really comfortable and relied on Microsoft. And the other part that Eurene was also speaking to about, okay, I forgot that part. But organizing my thoughts, I'm thinking that this was a very like graceful mishap. In order for people to come out with more stronger reliance on technology, But also it could be an era of 10 more Gates and 10 more Steve Jobs because of this situation, that so that we can catalyst into a our full potential.
So what you're saying is that maybe this is calling for the new tech genius to develop the
Like,
firewalls necessary to protect ourselves.
we've been sleeping on it. Like, we
Yeah.
just rely on Steve Jobs's legacy and Gates's legacy. There
Mm.
has been too much evolution for us to have this mistake. And it was very gracious of God to give us this minor mistake when it could have been so catastrophic.
Mm. I like what you're saying because this highlights things that are present in a lot of technological scandals and hack is that tech is growing exponentially, but I think the safety on tech is not necessarily the thing that is growing exponentially, even though people are doing their best. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. Isaiah and Sage, do you have like anything to say about this, or do you just feel like you want to pass on this one?
I don't know like what the solution would be, but I agree it's calling for a solution to be made and have some sort of backup or some sort of way of, because the airlines had no way of accessing anything. They couldn't do anything by hand. I talked to several people about it. So yeah, and also all of the stuff that's happened with Trump's shooting, Kamala Harris kind of stepping in for Biden, although she's not the official nominee yet, and this Microsoft thing, it all falls within this time of Mars and Uranus being conjunct. If any of you guys love astrology, and Mars governing like leadership and Uranus governing change. So Mars and Uranus being conjunct, leadership, change, yeah, shakeups in like leadership, and there's such a big theme in like yeah, like maybe not giving your power away or like overly relying on or someone, or like they did with Biden, or how some people view Trump, or like we see now Microsoft, like, hey, we really depend on you, Microsoft, but things have gotten kind of shaken up now. So what needs to happen now? That's kind of been the theme. Interesting, huh? So not to say that planets cause things, but they kind of bring these energies up for like us to then experience them.
Yeah. Just food for thought and healing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. After this astrological page, I think we need to talk a little bit about tourism and how it affects the locals. I think this is not the first time we're talking about it. And funnily enough, like we've talked about this subject with Spain. So we are going back to Spain again to kind of talk about how tourism is making the prices just like shoot up, especially on everything that is Costa del Sol, Costa Brava, Ibiza. And a lot of people are kind of um, fighting for, um, get their island or get their city back. Because like a lot of people, for example, in Barcelona or Ibiza are unable to put any kind of down payment on houses or even rent because of tourism. And I think that may be like a bigger, more global problem that when we think, especially in this time of inflation. So Isaiah and Sage did the research on that, and I would love to hear what was the thing that you you would like to highlight from the articles and research that you did on this. Kind of explain to summary.
Yeah, basically, in Spain, since it's such a huge tourist destination, there's like a growing trend, and there has been, of like people purchasing like second homes in Spain, like non-Spanish citizens, right? And also people just owning homes just to like rent them out, vacation rentals and stuff like that. And because those people are buying up more and more homes, and so that kind of that's means there's greater demand for homes. There's not as much supply, and it's just driving up prices, and that's something that we probably see worldwide. Like I've heard about that all the time too, in like American cities, particular in the US, especially though, like foreign investors sometimes even buying homes just to have them as an asset, so. And it brings up this question of like, should anybody be able to like buy a home, or should there be priority given to citizens of the country to actually live there? And is that like a just and equitable allocation of resources, And then the other question that came into my mind was, so on the other side of this, could Spain just build more housing units? Like, what would be the problem with that? Like, Spain is not a super densely populated country, it's not like extremely densely populated or anything like that. And it has like these interior portions that are like pretty sparsely populated, so they could expand more. But the question is like, would people want to live there? Would it be close enough to opportunities? Well, Spain has the second most high-speed rail of any nation by length. And the top is China, and China is a massive country. So Spain has excellent public transit system for such a smaller country. To have like the second most high-speed rail is like insane. So I was like, hey, why couldn't they just build more housing units more in the interior of Spain? But another concern is like preserving that like Spanish countryside, because I know people really value that too. Being able to go to the countryside, see the stars, see the animals, wide open spaces, so I don't know what the answer is, but hopefully I laid that out decently. I'd love for anyone to comment, especially if Jose and Michaela could come by, because they live in Valencia. And so it's just interesting. We have a lot of people in Spain, so maybe.
Yeah, it's true. I feel like there is a lot here. Spain got into several housing crises, so I don't think we want to repeat that history right now. So maybe there may be a fear there, and also obviously, like there is a lot of nature and to protect, and I don't think people want to kind of uproot themselves and leave the city they were born in. So what you said about reserving some spaces for the locals is like kind of having a state that is more like intervening in the lives of people, which we are always healing, I guess, as a society, because like most political debates are on how much the state kind of governs you and intervenes in your personal life. But I feel like there is some comparison and parallels to draw with space war and space expansion, because that is kind of a territory that we haven't explored yet. And I think if we want to preserve our way of life, what are we choosing? So what are we choosing to live, and how, and what are we choosing for our city? And I think a lot of people, Europeans, are very upset with the fact that tourists are taking up all the space and I'm kind of tired of that in Barcelona, in Paris, in Amsterdam. And the tourists in return are kind of upset because people are rude because we're tired of seeing tourists. And there's a whole thing about that. So um, I don't know what the solution is for sure, but it feels like we kind of need to get down on this because we cannot continue to say that, oh, it's a fault of the French or the Europeans, like they are so rude, or like Americans all the same, like not respecting our countries. So what's going on? What should we do? And yeah, that's a question I don't have an answer for now because it is so complicated and so very um it's very like intrinsic to each city. So even in Spain, like the solution may not be the same from city to city, but I'm curious to know like what do you guys feel about that, Granville? Did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, so like as you were sharing, I was just feeling into that energy of the complaint because there's an underlying complaint, but this situation didn't create itself. So it wasn't a situation that was imposed on many of the European countries that are now starting to have a challenge with it. They position themselves significantly as tourist destinations. And rightly or wrongly so, it contributes quite significantly to their economies. So, it's kind of like, well, you created the situation. You may not have completely thought it through well, but also don't cry wolf. Find another solution. Find a way of mitigating it and not to go into the other extreme of the Venice example, where people now are being asked to pay for access to certain things and stuff like that. I just feel like we have a tendency as humanity to go down a path, and when that path no longer serves us, then the path is the problem, not the decision that we made to go down that path in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nadia?
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that because Spain has positioned itself for tourism on one hand, and on the other hand, Spain's economy is not doing well. The last I visited Spain was like, I want to say 7 years ago. And even then, the economy was so poor that when I was doing a fellowship at the hospital, the doctors were worried about their living situation. So they can definitely benefit for these tourists and build more houses and employ others to build these houses. And if it ever goes to that extent, like in New York City, where there are so many tourists that the apartment rates are just unacceptable, it can go into rate stabilization and rate control because there's people that lived in a place for 20 years and they have a business that brings up a certain amount and they can only pay for that amount. And although prices are going to go up in surrounding areas because of tourists, there are solutions for this and they can accommodate this for their advantage rather than thinking that, you know, the tourist is taking from them. Instead, they can truly receive.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think we have the same situation in the Caribbean and we have the same situation in Hawaii and people being very upset. But I think in some way, shape, or form, like they've chosen to have that life and rely on this economy. And maybe all of them felt that it's because they were poor or not given a lot of options by their central state that they had to go into tourism. But I think there is also a thing about like, hey, my culture is cool, like come here, but there needs to be a lot more regulations around them. So we may talk a little bit more about that in future discussions because this is very interesting and I think a lot of people could benefit from hearing that. But for now, this is everything we have. So thank you to everyone who watched us, and don't forget to like, share, and comment if you enjoyed the discussions. And so we can do a lot more than them, a lot more of them. So see you next week. Bye bye.